moment, but my name's Lindsay. I'll be moderating this panel today. One thing that I wanted to mention before we get started is that one of the things we're doing during Great Home Store is raising money for Catch. Catch is an organization that aims to end homelessness in the Treasure Valley. And we have a silent auction going with some really, really, really great donated items, many of them from, some of your panelists and some of the people in the audience here. And yeah, the prices are still low. So get in there and get your bids in but let's raise some money for Catch. There is some little bit of information over there with their mission, as well as a QR code that you can scan to see those auction items and register to bid. So please do that before you leave here tonight, because it's going to be going through, I should mention that too, the auction's going to be going through the whole Great Home Store. So you'll have a chance to, and I'll warn you, I was told I was outbid today on my golf package. So you'll get notifications and you can get in there and make sure you up your bid. Who did it? Was it one of you? Oh goodness, that's great. Okay, well, this is Smart Moves Insight for Home Buyers. We're talking today we've got, and again, I'll let everyone introduce themselves, but we have an escrow officer, a lender, a real estate agent, and a representative from a new home construction builder to kind of talk about, we're going to be asking some commonly asked questions about the process of buying a new construction home and just some of the things that might be different than maybe when you bought a resale house in the past or something like that. And so we'll get a chance to hear from each of our panelists for different questions that kind of pertain to their area of expertise. So I will, without further ado, we'll start here down at the end with Dave, and you can introduce yourself and who you are and what you do.
Oh, it's on.
Click on the very bottom.
Okay, there we go. All right. Well, hey, what a pleasure it is to be here. My name is Dave Perry. I am with Guild Mortgage. I have been helping families in the Treasure Valley create generational wealth through owning real estate responsibly. This is my 24th year here in the Valley. So happy to be here.
And I'm Christy Gerber. I'm an escrow officer with Venture Title and Escrow, and I've been doing this for 27 years. But I started when I was 12.
Thanks, Christy. My name is Scott Gibbons. I am with Alturas Homes, and I'm just excited to be here and grateful to have the opportunity to answer some questions and chat about new homes. It's an exciting and tricky time in the market right now.
My name is McKenna Fusselman. I work for Brighton Homes as well. I currently manage our Cadence 55 Plus community. I've been with Brighton for 6 years now. So yeah, I'm excited to be here and help answer any questions that you guys have.
Should we pass this right back to you, Dave?
Oh,
Yeah. All right. Well, without further ado, the first thing we're just going to kind of start with some general questions, and please just feel free to snag that mic if you want to answer some of them later on. We'll get into like title specific questions and lending specific questions that we kind of clear who it's geared towards. But this could really be for anybody who wants to jump in and answer. But can you talk about any kind of like misconceptions about buying a new construction home and just, what people need to know about how buying new construction might be different than a resale home?
Okay, that sounds like
I would say a common misconception would be like going into the process in the very beginning is it's like upgrades or all or nothing. So usually during a build process, you would be able to have the option. And sometimes it's all apart, but sometimes not. So depending on the builder, of course. I would say another one would be a home inspection is not required, but I would say if a builder's not recommending an inspection, that's kind of a red flag. We always recommend having an independent home inspection just because you never know what can come up, and it's just kind of eases your mind, through that process.
Yeah, I could add. I mean, there's a lot of ways you could go with this question, but over the years, I think I've seen there's sometimes some tension between new home construction and new home builders and people that are in the market to purchase homes, in the sense that there's a perception that construction people are just really out to get everybody else. And That, I mean, that may be the case, right, in some instances, but I think generally, as somebody that's in the industry, and I've done it pretty much my whole life, really, our goal is to provide a product that's so good that there are not issues later. We don't want to have to deal with issues after the fact, but we're also relying on a trade base that's not, um, nobody's perfect, right? And when we meet with clients, we tell people, hey, we've never ever built a perfect home, and it doesn't matter how expensive it is or how inexpensive it is. Nothing is ever perfect. And to manage those expectations that, hey, if there's big issues, they get taken care of. But homes require maintenance as well. And I think sometimes people do, as another issue, move into new homes thinking, hey, I'm never going to have an issue. I don't have to do anything. The sprinklers are perfect. They're never going to need adjusted, and everything's set up and dialed in. And this, they require some work. So it's not just a free pass to the couch on Saturdays, right? They just require a lot of work.
Let's talk a little bit about the financial piece there. Dave, especially if you want to jump in here, what are some things that home buyers need to know about purchasing a new construction home and how that pertains to the different like mortgage programs that they might be looking at? What are, some of the, kind of mistakes that could be made during the process of buying a new construction home?
Yeah, so we've talked already just a moment ago about setting proper expectations, and that's really important for everyone involved in the process, including on the lending side. And so what we try to do is make sure that there's stellar communication from everyone involved, and that could be with a buyer coming in, being represented by a real estate agent, making sure that we're communicating well with that agent. We understand first and foremost, sometimes buyers come in, one of the biggest mistakes that I see is they ask the question, they say, well, how much can I qualify for? Anybody else see the problem in asking that question, right? And starting there? What would be a better question to ask? Maybe something along the lines of, what could I comfortably afford? Because believe it or not, the difference between what's possible, i.e. what you could do, and what you should do are not always the same, right? Those two things are not always the same. And so we start with doing a thorough analysis of, tell us what your goals are. What are your hopes and dreams for real estate, for this home purchase? What's important to you? Why are you buying this home? Realize we haven't even talked about money yet, right? And when you talk about those things first and you help people understand what's most important, or at least tease out from them what's most important, rarely is money, i.e. making money or a return on investment, especially if we're talking about a primary residence, that's not the first thing. That's not the most important thing. It might be, hey, I want my kids to go to this school. I want to be in a neighborhood where there's other similar demographic or age group people for my children. Or, hey, the home that we're moving from has too large of a yard. I don't want that kind of maintenance anymore, right? We're empty nesters now. We have to start with the why. That's one of the most important things that people can do. Once we understand the why, now we can figure out how to back our way into the how, i.e. the dollar side of things. So asking those questions and then coming in with an idea, especially if we're talking about spouses, prior to, is a really, really helpful thing. We can get to what we really need to talk about quicker.
Awesome, thank you. Christy, title is, you guys are there at the end, you get all of our signatures. I think it's probably one of the like least understood when it comes to the average, home buyer. Why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about the role of title in the purchase of a new home?
Yeah, so what title and escrow does is we start off by doing a title search once we receive that contract. So top thing is getting that contract to us as soon as you get it signed. And then we are going to do the research on that property to make sure that we're listing any exceptions on that title report as to what's against that property, any loans, liens, HOA dues, taxes, all that good stuff. So title insurance protects the buyer, first of all, that we make sure that when we transfer title to that buyer, that we've made sure that everything is free and clear of anything that could be against that property. We also make sure that we are prorating any taxes, HOA dues, irrigation, sewer, trash, anything that could be against that property to make sure that everything is paid current at time of closing. And then we're also ensuring the lender, if you're getting a loan, to make sure that they're going to be in first lien position. Again, that there's no other loans or liens against that property before we transfer title. So that's the first thing that we do. And then, of course, we work with the lender to make sure that we are putting the closing statement together with all of the numbers, meaning the loan numbers, any assessments that we're prorating, taxes, all that good stuff. And then we go over the closing documents with you at closing and explain the loan documents, answer any questions at closing, collect the funds if you're bringing the cashier's check, and then we record and then disperse those funds. And then at the end, we are issuing the title policy to the buyer, ensuring that's their insurance policy, and then also ensuring the lender with their insurance policy for the loan.
So really simple stuff then.
It's easy. You know, a lot of people think we just push a button and print the docs and we do the closing, and that's actually the easy part of the job. It's the background stuff that we're working hard in the background, and then we come up cool and collected and do the closing. We have hair's on fire in the back.
And on that note, is there anything that you see that's, some common or somewhat common if it, that can cause a delay in closing? And is there anything that buyers should be looking out for or know about?
Yeah, the biggest thing is kind of an easy one. You know, you're excited when you get that contract underway, but the earnest money. So we see that a lot of times where the earnest money gets delayed, or we're reaching out trying to get that earnest money. We can accept a cashier's check or a wire transfer, and we have a secure portal that we can send to your buyer to walk them through sending the wire in a secure way. I know a lot of people are a little bit concerned with wires. A personal check is okay too, as long as we have at least 5 business days for that check to clear. So if you've got a quick cash transaction and somebody brings in a personal check, there could be a delay with that clearing. So that's the biggest thing that we see. Also, just getting the requested items to your lender and the title company promptly. So when your lender or the title company asks for things, get them to us right away, just so we can keep everything moving smoothly and get the items that we need to process that transaction. Communicating travel plans. We see that a lot where, somebody's going out of town for the closing, and that's okay. We can send a mobile notary. We just need to communicate that to the lender to make sure that loan docs are going to be ready to facilitate getting docs to a mobile notary and getting them back in time to fund. Also, it's very rare to have a transaction where a spouse, even a non-borrowing spouse, doesn't have to sign something. So just communicating, husband comes to closing, not realizing that his spouse needs to be there as well, and oh, she's in China, that's a problem. And then just making sure that funds are available and the wire or cashier's check is ready to go. So cashier's check is easy, you bring that to the signing, but we've had some delays where out-of-state lender might not issue a wire transfer without them being there in person, or without a few hoops that they have to jump through that has delayed some closings. So just to make sure that you know your source of funds and how those are going to come to us.
Wonderful, thank you. Well, let's just talk about what are some of the benefits of purchasing a new construction home? Who wants to take that one?
It's brand new and shiny. What gets better than that?
Right?
I would say that, it's new, right? So you're gonna have less maintenance in the early years. There's less chances of surprises from previous owners that could come up. Being in a newer community that could, benefit your current lifestyle. So, if you are looking for a lifestyle at Pinnacle, we have that lifestyle aspect that could, add, that benefit to your lifestyle. So I would say those are really good benefits. Also, having a new home warranty is a really good benefit too. Most builders, for Brighton, we have a 3-year home warranty. First year, workmanship is all covered. Second year, all the systems at your home, plumbing, electrical. Third year, all the like major structural type things are covered under the 3-year warranty too. So also modern homes, modern new homes, new layouts, open layouts, energy efficiency homes. So I would say all those are really good benefits for new home construction.
Scott, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think those were all great answers. It's actually surprising how dynamic the industry is with trends and with style and with floor plan design, right? They change, and over, I don't know, even over the last 5 years, things have adapted. And so there's some advantages to buying a new home in the sense that the designs are updated. Everything's just updated. It just feels like it's new and it's fresh. And again, the warranty aspect of it is also important. So.
Wonderful, thank you. And when someone is buying, new construction, talk a little bit about timelines. I think there's probably some misconceptions about, what it means to be buying new construction and, some builders have inventory available. Maybe just talk about like some of the potential like timelines that people could expect when buying new construction.
Do you want me to take this one?
Sure.
Yeah, this is it's extremely variable between different builders. And even in Brighton communities, right? You have Brighton Homes, you've got James Biden and Alturas. And I think all of us do things slightly differently. So I'll speak from an Alturas perspective. We really love to, I wouldn't say control, but we love to have control over the process so that it's easy for buyers. And we have seen, because we built custom homes for a long time. My father was a custom home builder. My grandfather was a custom home builder. And so throughout the early 2000s till about 2000, probably 16, we did a lot of custom homes, even in Brighton communities. And one thing that we noticed was that there was always just one or two things that made people unhappy. As hard as you could try, like during that process, I mean, people are in the meat grinder, like looking at things during a construction process. And so it just became difficult to manage client expectations. So at Alturas, in around 2017, we changed from a custom model to more of a spec model, and we're pretty much 100% spec homes right now. And the intent of that was to make our true and honest goal was to make clients happy. And we felt like, hey, when they can just see a finished house and they can purchase it and they don't see the back end, the difficulty in getting there, that they would be happier. And we've actually noticed that. So for us, so to go back to the question, what is the process for buying a house? Really, for us, we try and make it simple. It's essentially they go see a model home and they love it and they contact one of our agents and make an offer. Generally, at the time that the house is for sale, there's really not a lot that can change. There's a few things here and there that we'll tweak for people, but again, we just want to make the process easy, and that simplifies things from the process. Now, on the other hand, that will eliminate some buyers, right? Some buyers actually want to be involved in that process, and some builders are very good at it. I think Brighton's great at it. James Biden is really good at that as well. At Alturas, it just was not our focus. And so I don't know exactly when people can buy homes at Brighton, but I think sometimes early in the process you can go in and there's certain things you can customize and choose, and those are all great. It probably just leads to some stress on both ends generally, but it works, right? It's a process that has worked well for different builders, and different companies have philosophies that change based on how they want to sell houses. So I don't know if that answered the question.
Oh, sure did. Anyone else want to chime in?
I can speak to Brighton. So currently we're doing more inventory homes as well that are move-in ready. When we have the option to do a pre-sold, typically 6 to 9 months, we say on average, depending on permit pull, weather, any delays in that manner. So I would say from pre-approval to contract, 1 to 2 weeks, 6 to 9 for the bill from start to finish. And then closing 30 to 45 days for your closing as well. So I would say that's kind of the basic timeline of a build job if you were to do a build job. And obviously move-in ready homes can be 30-day closing or 45 days. So
Wonderful, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about, Scott, you touched on this, the flexibility and customizing things. Maybe talk a little bit about, you talked a little bit about stress, but there's also, professional designers behind the scenes and things like that that are, helping make good decisions. Maybe talk a little bit about, and I know McKenna, if you want to chime in later too, you can talk a little bit about like the packages and stuff, but maybe talk a little bit about those design finishes and things like that.
Yeah, so this is a great question. So over the years when we've done custom homes, sometimes people tend to think they can figure out the design on their own. And we've done a lot of custom homes where somebody brings in, hey, I've got these 4 pieces of tile or whatever they want to incorporate into a design. And generally, we have always referred people to an interior designer, and every company generally has a great interior designer. My wife and I, just a personal experience, we were remodeling an old farmhouse, and I was doing the exact same thing that I really pushed against with clients, right? I was like, hey, well, I have this tile left over. Why don't we use it? And our designer was like, why are we going to use that tile? Well, it's free. I was like, well, how much is it really saving me? Not really that much, right? And so finally, my wife and I it was so stressful, we just turned it over and said, hey, why don't you just design everything? And it always turns out so much better when you can just like hand it all off to a designer. They just know what's best. They know what colors work. You may have some preferences, and generally that's great. But the best thing you can do is take one picture of something you love and show it to the interior designer and let them just run with it. And they're amazing at what they do. And it's tough for people like me or people that are buying homes generally to replicate that.
I would say, so from personal experience, when we did our, when we did a custom, I wouldn't say full on custom home, but we got to pick all of our finishes in our home. My husband and I, it was the most stressful thing. It was like 3 different appointments at a design center. And I was like, I don't know if this is all gonna look good together in the end. So I agree. Where if we have an interior designer, use them to your advantage. So for Brighton, our inventory homes, we base it off color packages that our interior designer has curated for our color packages that all go perfect together. You know, everything's going to look good. And, you know, on a pre-sold or a build job, you do have some, depending on the builder, have some personalization that you could, you know, swap out things if you want or upgrade certain items, all depending on the timing of that availability. But yes, I agree with just the ease of having it already done for you is so much less, it's less stress on you and it speeds up the process as well.
Thank you. All right, well, I would be remiss to not address the elephant in the room, which is, you know, interest rates. Dave, do you want to talk a little bit just about, you know, how that's impacting affordability right now, and maybe some lesser known programs that people should know about that might help?
Yeah. If I had a dime for every time I got asked what are rates going to do, right? Or where are they going and how quickly and all of that, I'd have a handful of dimes for sure. It's an interesting time right now. If you are even kind of skimming headlines out there, whether that's online or watching the news or whatever, there's enough out there to make people wonder what's really going to happen economically, both at a micro and a macro level. And I'm going to try and leave the geeky econ major in me out of this as much as possible. But there's some really interesting things that are happening and reasons why interest rates have come down some, but have not come down more, and then why they've come back up a little bit. And there's just a whole bunch of volatility in the markets right now. And when I talk about markets, I'm talking about, yes, the stock markets, also known as the equity markets. And then the bond markets, which typically there's an inverse relationship between those two. Money kind of flows from stocks to bonds when things get really choppy or volatile in the stock market. And so we saw that happen a few weeks ago. And that was when the new tariffs were announced, right? Or the threat of tariffs, if you will, as a negotiating piece. And this is not a political discussion, but these are things that move markets, right? That make people a little bit uneasy at a global scale. And so rates came down for about 36 hours, literally. On a Thursday, it happened on Wednesday. I can't remember what day it was, but it was on Wednesday. The next day, rates went down to the low sixes. They've been hovering in the high sixes. They went down to the low sixes on a 30-year benchmark rate for about 36 hours. And then all of a sudden, the market stopped doing what it was doing and it started climbing back up out of that. And rates have actually come up and they're actually a little bit higher today than they were before they even started going down several weeks ago when the tariffs were announced. Anybody that says that they know exactly what's going to happen right now is lying to you. They're very, very overly complimentary of their Nostradamus approach to hey, I know what's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. Here's one of the beautiful things about buying a home. And this is not always the way it works in all countries. Buying a home is one of the few things, the few assets that you can buy that you can, for as long as you live there, know what your payment is going to be. And it will never be more than that, with the one variable of your taxes and insurance can adjust slightly, right? But a 30-year fixed mortgage, it's very commonplace to us in the United States. It's not as common in the rest of the world. It's one of the few things you can buy where you know that there will be no change or very little change ever to your monthly budget as long as you stay in that home, right? Now, a 30-year fixed mortgage is not something that's designed for you to buy a home, pay 360 payments, and then throw a barbecue party with your friends and neighbors to celebrate. You just paid your home off. Does anyone in the room know someone that made the same payment for 360 months and then they paid their home off? I don't either. Okay. None of us do. It's designed to make buying a home affordable on a monthly basis for the American consumer. That's what a 30-year fix is designed to do. All right. Here's the cool thing. You can never ever trade in what you paid for a home for a lower price. What you paid is what you paid. In a rising price market, which if you go all the way back to the start of World War II, 1941, to now, and you looked at home prices in the United States, they have gone up 9 out of 10 years since that time. I would take those odds in Vegas. Okay. Historically speaking, buying real estate is a very, very sound wealth creation investment. And as human beings, we need food, water, and shelter. That's not going to change. So you can never trade in what you pay for a home. You can never change that. Whereas with the financing piece, when it makes mathematical sense, the beautiful thing is we can trade that in for a better rate and a better payment. You can have your cake and eat it too. It's one of the most amazing things. And I think that sometimes in the United States, we're lost on how fortunate we are to actually have that ability to, one, own property, and two, to be able to know what that property is going to cost us for as long as we plan to stay there. So, is that helpful?
Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you. I also wanted to say, do you want to maybe mention like some of the different loan programs that are out there?
Shoot, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Common misconceptions is that you have to have 20% down payment saved up to buy a home. It's probably the number one misconception for home buyers. You do not. There are so many amazing loan programs out there that require a lot less down than 20%. One of the questions here that we may talk about, or maybe I'll just touch on it now, is what's the typical down payment? The answer is whatever is comfortable for you. And it may make sense to do more, it may make sense to do less. Everybody's situation is unique. There is not one size fits all loan programs out there. There are government insured loan programs that are in many cases meant for first time home buyers. Those are like FHA, USDA, also known as rural development. We have great loan programs through Idaho Housing, which is our local housing authority. Guild has some proprietary, very low down payment or down payment assistance type programs that help people get into a home. I cannot tell you how often we have conversations with people and they say, well, I don't think I can buy a home. And I said, well, let's just look. Let's find out what's possible. And then they figure out that they could have bought a home 2 years ago at 2 years ago's prices. And then they kick themselves because they think, man, I wish I would have done it, right? I would have had X amount of dollars of equity, built up or wealth created. And so we don't have time to go through all the different loan programs, right? The point that I would like to just hit home is work with a lender who is experienced and knowledgeable, that has your best interest in mind, that will ask the right questions and help you craft a strategy that's going to fit your goals. Once we know the answer to those questions, now we can start figuring out the right places to go and what to do and how to design that strategy to accomplish what it is that you want to accomplish, which is purchasing a home, but we want to do it responsibly. Very, very important with great builders in new construction.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's say I'm buying a new construction home. I've, gone to talk to Dave. I've, figured out my ballpark of where I want my payment to be and what I'm gonna do. Um, next thing I thought to do was contact a real estate agent to, help me find a home to buy. If I start looking at new construction, when is the best time to bring my buyer's agent into that conversation?
Right away, even before the first visit, if possible. Just so everybody's on the same page, we're in contact with each other. The agent is properly registered, and they're able to, represent you, you know, as the process goes on and especially when it comes to contract.
And do you have to have an agent?
You don't have to, so the buyer has the option to choose whether they want an agent to represent them or they can work directly with the builder.
Thank you. Um, so bad. I'd love to have Christy talk a little bit about the benefit of, kind of working with a title company that has experience with new home construction or certain builders.
Kind of the partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really good for builders to kind of have a partner with a title company because there's a lot of requirements that a title company needs. And it makes the process so much smoother when we have that relationship and we've already received those requirements. We know the process, we know who signs. It just makes the process go so much smoother and we don't have to ask for a laundry list of requirements from a builder. So, yeah, it just makes everything, makes it go smoother for the buyer, the builder, the lender, everybody. So,
And to clarify, a buyer can, choose their title company. And this is just the benefit of letting the builder choose the title company
yeah,
that
I
is
think
the
just the
best.
knowledge, for the buyer, the agent, everybody involved working on that transaction to just know the benefits of a preferred title company with that builder and highly recommend using that title company that the builder chooses. It just makes the process go smoother, just like these guys were talking about, using the design person, use the professional that is good at that and has that relationship with that builder.
Do you want to chime in at all on that?
I will, I 1,000% agree with everything Christy said. As a buyer, when you're working with the right people, one of the greatest things that you can do is trust that this isn't their first rodeo. They know what they're doing. There's a reason why you fell in love with their product, right? You walked into a home, that home spoke to you, etc. It's like, all right, they didn't need your help or oversight for one during the course of construction to build that home to its finished state. So they don't need you to manage the project if you're doing pre-sold with them. Trust that it's going to happen. Also trust the people that they recommend and that they work with. It's going to make your life easier. It's going to make it more streamlined, and it's going to allow you as a buyer to focus on those things that you want to focus on, which is the fun stuff, right? The moving in stuff and all of those things. And so when you work with the same people, and we've got literally, I mean, this team here, and I can't speak for you, Scott, but Christy and McKenna and I and the Brighton folks, we literally have hundreds and hundreds of opportunities to have worked together over the years. Um, we we kind of work together pretty well. Our teams work together pretty well. We communicate well, and you can almost finish each other's sentences at some point, and it just makes it an easier, quicker, more enjoyable process. So huge advocate for the team.
And it just creates a well-oiled machine where there's no hiccups, there's no hurdles, just makes it smooth.
Thank you. One of the other questions that I want, don't know what the deal is with that. One of the other questions I wanted to just ask about, in just the general home buying process of selecting a community, selecting a home. Does anyone want to kind of address some of the factors that people should be keeping in mind when they are, choosing a community and choosing a floor plan, choosing, again, maybe not the exact finishes, but maybe even just choosing the builder based on how that investment is going to work for them in building long-term wealth?
I think I have my notes in here. Um, yes, so like long-term, basically ROI on your own home. So I put in here location and local job growth, so just keep an eye on that. The community amenities as well, pool quality, builder quality, their reputation, of course, energy efficiency and the layout flexibility, Energy Star savings, curb appeal, all that will help and tend to offer a strong ROI.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just add, do your research, right? If you're, it's so accessible now to look on Google, right? It's just a simple thing. And I think all of us probably do that, or Amazon when we go buy something. What's the first thing you do? You scroll down and say, hey, I wonder what everybody else thinks of this product, right? Because we're very influenced by what others think. And I think generally most builders do a great job. But yeah, do your research and find out what's going to work for you. And there's something that fits for everybody, and one size doesn't fit all. So I think just the more educated you can be about the products that are out there, the better off you'll be as a consumer.
Wonderful, thank you. We started talking about it a little bit, but I'd love to hear a few more personal stories because you guys had some really good examples. Can we go down the table and each of you share kind of what you might change if you were buying whether it's a first home or a move up, what you would have changed about your choices, the process, decisions that you would have made differently knowing what you know now?
All right, got some good ones.
Yeah, and if you could tell a story of just a buyer situation.
Yeah, sometimes you
play
learn
with
by
your
doing things the wrong way, right? And that's the story of my life, is you just learn by learn by experience, right? So I was working at an engineering company in 2006, right? And the market at that time was just crazy. And I was down in California. I moved to Boise for a different job. And I bought, with no money down, in the span of 1 month, 2 houses, one in Boise, one in Meridian, which is kind of crazy. At the time, I didn't know any better. I just thought, hey, this is the way to do it. No, it's just easy. You can just go talk to somebody and buy a house and just keep buying them, and they'll just appreciate forever. Um, they didn't, unfortunately. But my biggest mistake, going back to kind of what Dave mentioned, is I thought of my house as, hey, if I'm not making money on it as a rental, or if it feels like it might be too expensive to live in, was to panic and to, hey, what am I going to do? I'm going to sell. Um, so I made the mistake of buying those houses at kind of the top of the market, but also the mistake of panicking and getting rid of them. So I didn't really lose money on them, but I lost out on the fact that I just was too panicky about the situation. And had I just had a long-term, broader view of what a house is, like kind of, I think you described it really well, Dave. I'd be in a much better situation financially now than I. So it was just but it's a lesson learned, right? So and I think everybody has to go through some of those hard things to really learn it. Your parents can tell you as many times as they try, like, hey, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, but you're going to touch the hot stove just because that's like, hey, I want to find out for myself. So that was a good experience. And I think just looking at it as a big picture, it's not necessarily an investment, but it can be, but it's a necessity of life, and it's an important part of life, is the house that you live in.
I would just like to say I commiserate with that as a fellow class of 2006 home buyer.
Aside from my design center story and build of our previous home, kind of goes along with that previous home, but that home, looking back at it now, and I still think about it to this day, the interest rate was like 2.7. And I wish we would have kept it as a long-term wealth builder, because that's it's pretty low interest rate to give up, especially if it's in a good location and could have rented out easily. But I would say if I could take it back, I would have kept it, and I'm sure we could have made it work. Obviously, it's a risk, going into buying a new home, and hopefully you just cross your fingers that it all works out. But I wish we would have kept that home as an investment.
Yeah, I have to say, I love building homes. I love everything about it. I love picking everything out. I love anything brand new. I love to move. I'm one of those weird ones because you get to purge and weed through all of your stuff and start fresh every time. So this is the longest we've ever lived in a house and it's been 10 years and I want to build a new one so bad. You go and look at these awesome new shiny homes and all of the modern things and your tastes change over the years and things that were in style back then aren't in style now. And so I would say the biggest thing I think is just listening to your builder, listening to the design person. They're the professional. That was the one mistake I made in building my house. I built a custom home with a good friend of mine. So I literally picked out everything, every doorknob, every little thing I picked out, and I loved it. And I'm sick. But I love that kind of stuff. But I wish I would have had a professional designer that was helping me through that because my eye goes to all dark when I'm looking at picking something out. And so when you put it all together, it's like, oh, this is a little dark. I wish things were a little bit lighter. You know, the muffin tan paint for the wall wasn't all that pretty, guys. Muffin tan. So we have God knows this story of me having to, we moved out for 2 weeks to repaint our home after we've lived in the house for quite a while. And that was quite the ordeal, piling everything in the middle of the room. And we went on vacation and came back at 1 in the morning and 2 little kids. And I'm thinking I'm coming home to this pristine, freshly painted, beautiful, clean home. And that was not the case at all. There was paint dust everywhere and everything piled high and kids that need to go to bed. And it was not fun. It would have been easier just to move out and buy a new home. So I would just say, get the professionals, get somebody in to help design that. They know what goes well together. They know what colors go well and professionals that know what they're doing. I clearly don't.
So I'm married to a gal who has a degree in interior design, which is awesome and can be really, really dangerous if you don't let her just do what she wants. And so that's, I mean, this isn't a marriage advice class, but for those of you husbands or prospective husbands out there, mama knows best. I will tell you, Scott, I paid some tuition payments to the School of Hard Knocks myself. And, you may have heard the saying that knowledge comes from learning from your own mistakes, wisdom comes from learning from others. And so if you try and learn from other people's mistakes and you just kind of take a look at things, most of the mistakes that get made when we're talking about money, whether we're talking about purchasing real estate or whether we're purchasing other kind of investments, right? They're made by people taking a short-term approach to that. Now, no one knows exactly what's going to happen long-term or short-term, but the longer we project out into the future, the better chances we have for things to turn out in our favor. Is that fair? Right? And so I bought some homes back in that same time frame, 2006, 2007, and I still own one of those homes that I bought in 2007. And that home at the time, shortly after that, was one of those rare times since 1941, World War II started, right? Where it actually went down for a time in value. Well, today, compared to what I paid for it, it's worth 2.5 times that. Here we are 16 or 17 years later. So there's a lesson there on time, is my point, that I just like to drive home. And if we take a longer term approach to and figure out our why, typically the value measured in dollars works out in our favor as well. And so that would just be my recommendations to nobody looks at it. Don't look at it from a 1 or 2 or 3 year perspective. Look at it from a 5, 10, 15, and make sure you're clear on your why and your timeline.
Perfect. Thank you guys. Thanks for sharing your personal anecdotes there. Okay, so maybe just each of you in we'll kind of go down, I guess maybe go back down the table here. Let's talk a little bit about just how people can best prepare for each of the conversations or parts of the process that you each represent. So going in to get pre-approved for a loan, how can someone best prepare for that? By the way, I recently heard that process referred to as financial proctology. I want to see if you have a rebuttal for that.
Good one, new thought. You know, the truth of it is, from a pre-approval standpoint, there's a lot of misconceptions about the difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval. We don't do pre-qualifications on our side, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not worth it. We're going to tell you when you go to buy a home or when you go to make an offer on a home, we want you to have 100% zero question confidence that you're going to be able to buy that home. We're going to do the heavy lifting that takes place, and it doesn't require a proctologist exam. There's three main things that a buyer has to that we have to look at or analyze to qualify someone to know what they can buy: income, assets, and credit. It's very simple. It does not have to be complicated. So we have to verify your income. In a lot of cases today, we can verify your income electronically immediately, believe it or not. Now, sometimes you can't because you work for a small company or something like that, and we can't verify it through those automatic verification channels. But it's very, very simple. Assets are the same thing. We can verify your assets in many cases with your permission, by the way. You have to log into the third-party service, but we can verify your assets. It scrapes your account balances over. We know exactly how much money you have because we have to know that. Where's the down payment coming from, etc. And the credit, that's instantaneous as well. I can sit down with someone and in 30 to 45 minutes, have them leave with 100% confidence that they can go and make an offer on a house that day. And that's always the goal, right? Now, whether they're ready or not is up to them. Their timeline is our timeline. But it is not that difficult to, you just have to be ready. Now, if you're self-employed, get your taxes filed timely. It's very helpful, okay? And if you are going to write everything off and show a loss, let's talk about that before you actually press send on the return, things along those lines. There's some different things for self-employed borrowers. But it does not.
Talking about that a little bit.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
What advice do you give them if they want to build a house
Mhm.
and they're filing with taxes?
Yeah, great question. So the question was, what advice is there for people who self-employed that want to build a home, they're filing their taxes, etc. I believe we live in a wonderful country, and I don't like paying taxes still. They never feel cheap. Does anyone in here love paying taxes? A few days ago. No, it was this morning my tax check cleared. That was fun. Anyway, so what I will tell you on the self-employed side, there's a very big misconception. People think that the money that they make equals their gross revenue as a self-employed business owner, and it isn't. Income, specifically usable income for qualifying for lending purposes, is not the same as dollars generated from a business because we have expenses. We pay ourselves, we can use those dollars. There's depreciation. There's lots of other things that go into that final number of what we can actually use. So number one, working with a reputable and competent tax advisor is the number one thing. People that try and self-prepare their taxes when they're self-employed is a horrible idea, in my opinion, and from my experience. Expert advice is worth what you pay for it. Absolutely, especially when it comes to taxes and the IRS. So that would be my number one thing there. It really helps to bring us into the conversation with the tax advisor because sometimes it's a matter of, hey, we have all of these deductions, all of these expenses that we can take this year, but then that's going to make our income below the threshold of what we need in order to qualify to build and buy that home that they want. So there has to be communication with the team. I like to say that I'm part of your board of advisors. Every one of us in this room, whether we're self-employed or not, ought to look at our personal financial lives the same way a business does. Well, what does a business have? They have a board, and they have different people on that board that bring different things to the table. On your board is going to be a wealth advisor. You're going to have a tax advisor. You're going to have a mortgage lender. You're going to have a real estate agent. You're going to have a doctor, right? You're going to have an attorney. You're going to have all of these different people that help you manage your personal life and your wealth creation goals. And I'm simply just one part of that. But those board members need to talk, they need to communicate so that they can help enact and accomplish the plan that you come up with for your family. That would be my advice. Is that helpful?
And actually, I, no, you're fine. But I lied. I think we'll go in order of kind of the process. So we'll go down to, Christy, we'll come back to you at the end. Story of your life. But getting ready to go look for a new home. How can buyers best prepare for that process?
Yeah, so I would say we're the funnest part of the whole process is actually being able to walk through some homes, find out what home best suits your needs. It's kind of just the discovery process, right? Of finding out exactly what you want. You may have to sacrifice on some things, but we do our best to find the best match for you. So yeah, it's just coming into our community. And we have several that have model homes that you could come through, walk you through some inventory homes that we have, show you other availability. If we have lots available that we could build a home. So basically we are just the main hub of information on what's available, what could be available at this moment, if it's move-in ready or if it's a build job. So that gets the process rolling of picking out your home, going under contract, and then it's just the waiting game of going to closing. So that's kind of the simplified process.
Scott, will you add anything about preparing to pick your home?
Yeah, well, preparing to pick your home, obviously, again, kind of doing your research, finding what you like, what you love, and when you do, obviously making an offer on that home. I think really just one piece of advice that I would give and this can kind of follow the whole process, but every builder, every new construction builder is going to have a different methodology and process to how they work, right? And there's no right. It's right for that company. So Brighton is different than James Clyde, is different than Alturas, is different than anybody. And everybody's different. So I think as a consumer, if you can do your research and then understand how to trust the process of whoever you choose. So if you choose Brighton, Brighton has a process for how you should buy a home and how that home is warranted. And generally, if a buyer follows that process, things will work out pretty well. Same thing at Altura, same thing with James. So just trust the process because it is a complicated thing to build a home, have somebody come in and maybe make some changes and some tweaks. They're not easy to build. It's an expensive proposition to build a home. So there's processes in place at all these companies, even though they're different, that really guide a consumer to an ultimate end goal of being happy in the product that they purchased.
Thank you. And Christy, how do we prepare for closing?
So the biggest thing is just all the communication. Again, making sure that you're going to be in town for the closing. Let your team know if you're not, so that we can plan in advance and plan with the lender. We all work in closing date order in processing that transaction. So does the lender in getting us loan documents. Schedule in advance. So we all have a target date for the signing and for giving that date to the lender so they can prepare the loan docs. They have to disclose 3 days prior to us signing. So they have to have that closing disclosure to the buyer 3 days before we're even allowed to sign. So we just need to plan that. And then being flexible, taking time off work to be able to come in and sign your loan documents. We usually schedule an hour just so we can answer any questions and you're not rushed, but it usually doesn't take a full hour. So coming on a lunch break if you have to, we usually try to be flexible. I always like to schedule the signing for at least the day before we're going to actually fund and record. It just gets the signing out of the way. It allows for a lot more flexibility in signing times. Otherwise, you're going to need to come in first thing in the morning, right prior to 10 o'clock so that we can get everything back to the lender and fund. We can also fund a little bit earlier in the day if we sign everything the day before. So it just streamlines the process a little better, makes it go a little smoother, takes a little bit of stress out of everybody. So you come in hair on fire and we're all racing to get it done. We do it all the time, but it's easier if we can do it prior to. And then just knowing your source of funds and have that figured out ahead of time, knowing if you're going to wire and what your bank's process is for that wire. Most banks can get a wire out same day, but I have had some instances where it takes 3 days and that was not known and they tried to send a wire the day of and it was a problem. 3-day weekend with 5 kids. I got it to happen. Had to kick some doors down and pull some strings, but it's best if you have that process lined out and know your bank's requirements ahead of time. If you can't bring in a cashier's check. And then another one that people kind of don't look at is your driver's license, making sure that that's not expired. Had some instances where driver's license has been expired and they're racing to the DMV. So again, if we schedule in advance, it just helps everybody know a target date. Everybody knows and has the expectation set up of when we're signing, and then the funding day just is smooth, and then you get your keys. The closing experience should not be stressful. It should be exciting. Again, stick to the experts. We are all very experienced in what we do, and the hardest part that a buyer should have is packing and moving.
Which you just can't get enough of, apparently.
I love it.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys so much. I wanted to just open it up here briefly to see if anyone out in the audience has a question that we didn't get to today. Any follow-up questions for any of our panelists?
So actually, when you get to the lending process, even the closing process, is there any extra steps for somebody that's like not a citizen of the country or a foreigner?
And I'll just repeat the question for Zoom's sake. Is there anything special that we need to know about when it comes to purchasing a home if you're not a citizen of the US?
Just the proper documentation. We would know upfront, there are specific loan types that are allowed for people who are not citizens, and all of that documentation would be gathered prior to, but those are also, green card, right to work, things like that. Those are things that would need to be brought as well to closing, because Christy and her team, I won't speak for you, but would need copies of those just the same. We already have them as the lender, because we wouldn't get to the closing table without already verifying that everything that needs to be verified has been done, right? So, but she would need those as well. So it's just proper documentation, nothing outrageous. Yeah, great question.
I was just wondering, long time ago, I had a house built and it was, to get it going, it was only like $1,000. And then I waited 6 months and then I was able to move in and pay for everything when I did at that time. And now I'm sure it's not that, I'm sure it's higher. And I was just wondering, like, how much do you have to put down before you move in?
Okay, so yeah,
You're having it built.
so the question is just how much do you have to put down, and is it different on a new construction home on getting the process started?
Like construction loan versus conventional loan.
Yeah, earnest money.
Well,
Any of us could answer that, but on the lending side, any money that you put down upfront, i.e. that $1,000 in your example, or any amount that's required by your builder, the seller, is credited against future dollars needed at closing, of course, right? So, but I think you guys
I
could,
guess I'm asking how much.
What is the amount?
What's the
what do
amount?
builders that, ask,
let me pass this down.
what's the requirement?
So for Brighton, and this can vary across builders, but for inventory homes that are move-in ready, we just require 1% earnest money. And then for a build job or a pre-sold home, typically it's around 3%. So of the purchase price, yes.
I think that's pretty common industry, is the 1 to 3% range. There are other communities that are maybe more expensive homes where there's like a 10%. But that's probably an outlier. So does that answer your question? Okay. So yeah, you can get into a home, or you can put your name on a house, right? There, you still obviously have to go through the lending process and be qualified to purchase the home, but
Can I make just a comment too about these wonderful builders here, Brighton and then James Clyde and then Alturas as well. One of the things they do is they make your life as a buyer really, really easy, because they don't require that you get construction financing to build a home, right? And that's a really important one, whether you're buying an inventory home, also sometimes called a spec home, something that you didn't necessarily design from the start. But some builders will allow you to, put your touch on it, maybe pick some colors or some finishes, things along those lines. But you don't have to go and get construction financing. And we can do construction financing, and I do a lot of that. But another process, right? They let you focus on the things that are really enjoyable and fun. Where you're going to put the crib, right? Where's your study going to be? All those things. And then we just make sure that the money is ready and waiting for as soon as that last nail is pounded and the paint's dry, that you guys are moving in and we're handing you a set of keys. They make it really easy on you. And that's one of the reasons I love working with these people, is the experience is just curated and consistent from start to finish. It's really, really good.
Answer your question.
So,
So the money up front is called earnest money, and all of that is going to be credited to you on the closing statement that I'm going to go over with you at closing. So that's just your skin in the game, if you will, that you are tying up that home, that you've said that you want that home. And that's just your deposit that you're putting down that will be credited to you day of closing.
Awesome, thank you. Other questions?
Two questions. So how many days before the earnest money goes hard and you don't get it back?
When do you lose your earnest money is the question.
So typically it's upon contract acceptance, is when that will be deposited. And obviously it can vary depending on, what's written in the contract, but that's for right, and that's what we typically do.
what about contingencies?
Yes, contingencies. So it's totally refundable on a contingent offer. So if the buyer needs to sell their home and use the funds from the sale of their home to purchase the new home, consider contingent. And if it falls through, if they have to back out for any reason, then they can get their earnest money back. It's refundable.
Like inspection content, like when does the earnest money go hard?
So once
Or
they're,
it's not refundable?
yeah, so once their home that they're selling is past inspection and the contingencies removed, then it becomes non-refundable.
But are there also inspection contingencies and financing contingencies?
No, so once we're at that point of the contingency removal, that's when it becomes non-refundable.
Other questions for support?
Yeah, that's okay. Scott, that's okay.
Right. So what's your, what do you think is the difference between like a builder that's like, puts out a really good product and has a good timeline versus builders that maybe aren't good and don't have good timelines, and what in your opinion, what distinguishes?
Oh, man, maybe that's a loaded question. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know of many builders that are just not good. Right. Maybe some, I don't know, but even off the top of my head, I can't think of any that I know that are like, oh man, I would avoid that person or thing. Maybe I just don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's some one-off custom builders, but generally the guys that are one-off custom builders are really more present on the job site and more involved. And so they're really more craftsmen. That's their nature and their trade. And so they generally do a great job. So, I mean, I think trying, if your question is leading towards like, hey, how do you find the right builder? I think you're safe in today's marketplace with pretty much anybody. I mean, I know, like, I'll pick on CBH. I actually feel like CBH builds an amazing product for what they do, right? Their market is entry level and they get a bad rap. I mean, everybody talks about, oh, you live in a CBH house or whatever, right? You hear about these horror stories, but they do a great job and they use really good products in their houses. Like I've been to a lot of CBH communities and they actually build a great product. And I don't know why there's a perception that maybe they're subpar, because they're not. They're good. I mean, their designs are they're designed to be efficient so people can afford them. And that's great. And sometimes I think people expect more out of that, but I don't know if that answers your question, but I think generally in the market today, there is so much information available to people that if there were builders doing intentionally like a bad job or subpar quality, they would be vetted out of the market really quickly.
Our experience on our house, my realtor, with Brett.
it?
You still work with Brett?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he really helped me because he said, like, look, that builder is gonna build an amazing home, but just know it's gonna take twice as long.
Yeah.
So it was just setting that expectation, and we weren't in a huge hurry. So he built us an amazing home, but it took about twice as long.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I think every builder's gonna have a different process, right, for how they start to end, and there's a million ways to build a house, right? It's not rocket science, but the process drives the end result, and sometimes people are quick. I mean, even with the history of Alturas, I've been with Alturas since like 2011, when we started the company, and I look at how many different schedules we have had to build a house, and I would probably say it's in well over 200 different templates for how to build a house, right? And the schedule, and it's constantly changing and adjusting. Sometimes we were like, hey, we got to cut time on the schedule. It's got to be really tight. We found problems with that. Then we went too long, and it's just adjusting, right? And so we've rebuilt and scheduled templates are it's just an ever evolving process as we've learned things and as you have different trades and your philosophy as a business changes. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong, right? You could get the best house ever in a year or a pretty good house in 3 months or whatever, but it's kind of just depends on what builder you choose. But I think they're all generally pretty good.
Thank you. Any other questions from? Yes.
I have one for Dave. I think you already touched on this a little bit, but it's kind of a misconception, I think, for consumers to find a lender only when they feel like they're ready to buy a home. But I think it's really important for consumers to understand that they should find, number one, like you said, find the lender that's the right fit for them, that has their best interest in heart. But that they can use as a resource to figure out what their long-term plan is. We talk about that a little bit more and in using lenders as a resource and not just going to them the week that they're ready to buy a home.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, so the question is, when do you kind of tap into that resource of consulting with a lender?
The answer is as soon as you can, as soon as you start even considering purchasing a home, and even if that purchase is likely to come down the roadways, we need to, sometimes there needs to be a little bit of tidying up that we have to do financially. And once we know what I call someone's current reality is, once we know what current reality looks like, now we can have a plan. And it might mean, hey, we can move forward right now with full confidence. It might mean, hey, we got to do a couple of things, and that's okay. And so finding a lender who's going to ask you the right questions and it doesn't have what I call commission breath, okay, where they're looking at it from a relationship standpoint and not a transaction standpoint. That's very, very key. And you can tell, can't we all tell as consumers, right, when someone has our best interest in mind or theirs? If you're getting that feeling that they're just out for what's best for them, or they're trying to bring you in the front door and kick you out the back as quick as they can, you're probably in the wrong spot, right? So the sooner the better is the answer. Ideally, if you were talking about an order of operations, Scott just talked about, a schedule, right? And that is a construction schedule. Correct me if I'm wrong. Would be like, well, this is where we start, this is where we end, and this is what happens in between those 2 points. If you think about the home buying journey and where meeting with a lender and finding out what you can qualify for, and then what you should qualify for, is part of that process, that really should happen towards the very front, if not be the first thing that you do. Before you go out and start window shopping or go, the parade of homes is awesome, right? It's a ton of fun. And most people that come through the parade are there for entertainment, not necessarily to buy. And that's great. You see the new trends, you see this beautiful stuff, you're like, oh man, one day. That's great. We need to know beforehand what's possible and then what we probably should do as well. So sooner the better. Is that helpful? That answer your question? Yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering about like, if you are buying contingent on the sale of your home, what if your home doesn't sell? Like how long, like say the house is done and ready for you, but your house hasn't sold yet. How long do you wait for that person to sell their home? And then also, what do you think about bridge loan?
Yeah, I'll talk on the loan side of things. Your other question is best suited for other panelists, but on the bridge loan side of things, the traditional term of a bridge loan is kind of what it sounds like. It would be, it allows you to gain access to some of the equity from your departing residence to use as a down payment on the new residence, and allows you to move into the new residence before your departing residence has sold. And it sounds really easy and really good on the outside, and in practice, it's not quite as easy or quite as good. The best option for you is always going to be selling that home prior to moving in, every single time, no matter what. Now, there are things that can be done, and bridge loans are one of those things. In certain situations, a bridge loan might be the right thing to do. They're just expensive, and we always try to find other options that are better, that will allow you to accomplish your goal. That primary option being selling your home. And part of that is being realistic about what you're selling your home for, working with a competent real estate agent to list your home that will list it for what the market price will bear, right? That's the number one reason why a home doesn't sell, is the seller, who is also the buyer on the other side, is unrealistic about what their home is actually worth to the market. The market decides what your home is worth, not you, even though we're all attached to our homes and my home is the best and all those things. That's great. But the market decides. As far as time and how long they'll wait for your home to sell, I'm going to defer on that one.
So there's two pieces to it, I would say. So we require what's called a bump clause on a contingent offer. So what that means is if another buyer sees this home and wants to offer, do a cash offer on this home, the original buyer would have 72 hours to be able to remove their contingency if they can, to be able to move forward with the purchase. If they can't, they would terminate and you get your earnest money back. The other piece would be if your home is taking a little bit longer to sell, Brighton would consider 30-day extensions. And they're really willing to work with the buyer, and they want it to be a win-win for everybody. So, you know, it's ultimately up to the builder to decide how long they want to do those extensions, but they're typically really willing to work with you on that. So.
I have a quick question from Hannah. If I'm a buyer and I'm really undecided whether or not I want to use a real estate agent to represent myself in the purchase of a new build, like you said, Brighton or Alturas or whomever can represent me, and I don't need an outside buyer because you're a realtor and you can represent me the same. If I change my mind halfway through the process, am I then able to bring in a real estate agent to represent myself?
Yeah, typically no, just because you would sign a buyer's rep with the new home specialist, whoever it is in the community that you're purchasing. There can be some instances where, there's maybe some miscommunication or something where, we don't want to cause any issues as far as, if the other agent was, really was in the picture. So kind of case by case, but typically no, just because you have to sign that buyer's representation agreement.
Great, wonderful. Well, we have the room for another 10 minutes or so. There are still some snacks. If anybody is feeling a little noshy, you can get some little treats over there. And then also I'd love for you to check out that silent auction. So there's still time to do that. And I just want to say a huge thank you to our panelists for being here tonight and for answering all of these questions. I know it was a lot to cover, and I appreciate everybody's wisdom and expertise. So thank you so much. And of course, this is one of our first events for Great Homes Tour. So we hope that you'll come and check out Great Homes Tour.